In this video, we are going to talk about blood. Overview of the blood. The components of the blood contain cells and plasma. The cells contain red blood cells, another name erythrocytes. It makes about 45% of the blood volume. White blood cells, another name leukocytes. It make less than 1% of the blood volume. Platelets, less than 1% of the blood volume. And the Buffy, which is the combination of the leukocytes and the platelets. And the plasma make about 55% of the blood volume. The function of the blood. There are three functions of the blood: distribution, regulation, and protection. The blood delivers oxygen, transports waste, and hormones. The blood regulates body temperature, normal pH level, and the fluid volume. The blood protects against blood loss and infection. The composition of blood plasma. Water makes 90% of the blood plasma. The solute in the blood plasma contains protein, which is albumins, globulins, clotting agents, hormones, and enzymes. The other solutes include nutrients, electrolytes, respiratory gases, and non-protein substances. The first form element of the blood I'm going to talk about is red blood cells. As I mentioned in the video earlier, another name for red blood cells is erythrocytes. The spectrum is the protein gives the red blood cells that biconcave shape.
Structure and functions of red blood cells. The red blood cells contains the hemoglobin, and this hemoglobin, as you can see on the picture, has four different chains, 2 alpha chains and 2 beta chains. Each of these chains holds a molecule of iron, and each of these molecules of iron holds a molecule of oxygen. And when oxygens are attached to these hemoglobins, they are called oxyhemoglobin. And when there is no oxygen in these hemoglobins, they are called deoxyhemoglobin. When carbon dioxide are being attached to the chains, that's the alpha chains and the beta chains, they transform the hemoglobin to become what they call the carbaminohemoglobin.
Erythropoiesis is the red blood cell production, and this is very important. The red blood cells are made in red bone marrow.
Some clinical problems are anemia, which is a reduced oxygen carrying capacity, and some causes of this is decreased red blood cells, which is hemorrhage, anemia, which is having blood loss, chronic or rapid. Hemolytic anemia is red blood cells break down prematurely, and aplastic anemia is destroyed red bone marrow. So the second is decreased hemoglobin levels, which is iron deficiency anemia, and that is the lack of iron so that the body does not make enough red blood cells. The second is athletic anemia, which is temporarily, and that is the lack of oxygen so that the body does not make enough red blood cells. And the third is pernicious anemia, which is the lack of vitamin B12. The third is abnormal hemoglobin. The first one is sickle cell anemia, and this is a trait common in Africa, which is one of the genes are disfigured compared to the other one. And then the second one is thalassemia, and that is a common trait with people with the Mediterranean ancestry. And that is when your globulin chains are either weakened or missing. So the next one is polycythemia, and the first one is high red blood cells. Blood can get too thick, hard to pump. The second one is polycythemia vera, which is slowly growing blood cancer, and that means more red blood cells. And the third one is secondary polycythemia, which can be too much red blood cells.
The next found element we'll be talking about will be the white blood cells. The white blood cells are also called the leukocytes. Their general functions is for immune defense. For their structures, they have 2 different subdivisions. That's the granulocytes and the agranulocytes. The granulocytes has granules in them, and they are made up of the neutrophils, the eosinophil, and the basophils. The neutrophils, the way you can recognize them is that they have multiple nucleus in them, and they have granules in them, and their main function is to phagocytize bacteria at the site of acute infections, and they are always the first to get to an infected site. While the eosinophil, when looking at them, you can see the two lobes in them and the poppy red granules in them. Their main function is to kill parasitic worms. And for the basophils, while looking at them, you can't really differentiate between them and their nucleus because the granules in them covers the nucleus, and their main function is to produce histamine. Now let's talk about the agranulocytes. The agranulocytes do not have granules in them, and they are made up of the lymphocytes and the monocytes. For the lymphocytes, they have the T cells in them and the B cells in them. The T cells actually helps to fight cancer-affected cells or virus-affected cells. The B cells actually produce antibodies to fight infections. For the monocytes are known to be the big eaters. They phagocytize bacteria at the site of chronic infections.
Clinical problems of white blood cells. The first one is leukemia, and that is a high number of white blood cells, and this is a type of cancer. The second one is kissing disease, and that is it goes into white blood cells and destroys them from the inside. The third one is leukopenia, and that is low number of white blood cells.
The next form element is the platelets. There are thousands and thousands of platelets in the body, and these platelets, their main function is just to stop bleeding. That's to clot your holes, to clot up anywhere that is being torn.
Hemostasis is the process of clogging up holes in your blood vessels. The events of hemostasis is vascular spasms which shrink the blood vessel. The second one is platelet plug formation, which is when you tear up or expose a blood vessel, you expose collagen. This tells platelets something is wrong, so that the hole should be fixed. The third one is coagulation, and this is blood clotting. And this is when it turns blood from liquid to a gel. There are 3 phases of this. The first phase, it converts prothrombin into thrombin, and the third phase of this forms fibrin mesh. There's 2 different type of pathways. The first pathway is extrinsic pathway, which is it slows away and it helps your blood clot it all by itself. And the second one is extrinsic pathway, and this needs extra stuff to clot, and it's much faster compared to extrinsic pathway. And clot retraction repair is drying up of the fibrin mesh. Fibrinolysis makes smooth muscles cells divide. And the control of clot formation is the dissolving of blood clots during the process of formation.
Clinical problems of hemostasis. The first one is hemophilia. This is basically mostly found in male, and you have the hemophilia A and hemophilia B. The second one is a thrombocytopenia. This is actually the low count of platelets in the blood. Then the third one is the liver dysfunctioning, not making enough procoagulants. When you don't make enough procoagulants, you don't have enough thrombins, and you can't clot blood. The fourth is the thromboembolism, and that's the clot in blood vessels.
Alright, so this is the chapter of blood. Hope this video will help you guys.